If you're into gaming or collecting and you don't live under a rock, you've probably experienced peer pressure. Peer pressure to have more or better games, or to beat games that are maybe super difficult, or peer pressure exists in the entire landscape of gaming and collecting, and it really sucks. Let's get into it. New here, consider subscribing, hit that like button if you would, it helps out a ton. Anyway, peer pressure in gaming. Let's discuss it. So, have you ever experienced the pressure to have more games, better games? We often see huge collectors, YouTubers like myself, with video games in the background and that sort of thing, and it gives you the impression that in order to be a legitimate collector, you have to have the most games. You have to have hundreds, thousands of games. Some of the biggest collectors out there that we're all familiar with have complete libraries of hundreds upon hundreds of games, tens of thousands of games in some cases. And then there's, of course, the pressure to have the best games. Obviously, there are those essential must-play games that everybody talks about. You might be a younger gamer and you might not be into retro games, but there's always that pressure to play those essential games. The first Zelda game, the first Mario game, Mario 3, Super Mario World. You know, some of those games that are so iconic. And then, of course, we get into things like Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VI, which is considered by many to be the best game in the franchise. But maybe you don't want to play those games. Maybe you don't have a PlayStation 1. Maybe you're not into emulating. Maybe you just want to play modern games. Maybe you're the type of person who just wants to play Call of Duty or Fortnite or first-person shooters, Doom, things like that on your new or relatively new console, but you constantly feel this pressure from the community that there are these must-play games that you just have to experience in order to be a legit gamer. Are you a legit gamer? How about the most expensive games? Of course, anyone who is a collector has come across the entire conversation of the value of video games. We see with games being graded these days, some of the crazy sales, whether they're legitimate or not, is not the point of this video right now, but I'm sure you've seen these copies of Super Mario World Super Mario Brothers selling for like $1 million, or certain games selling for hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, graded and sealed. And of course that gives us pressure because we want to keep up with the Joneses, right? So many people feel the pressure to own these rare, valuable, or expensive games. Games like Rule of Rose on the PS2 or Panzer Dragoon Saga on the Sega Saturn, that we just feel like if I'm going to be a legit collector and I'm going to, hold my head up high in the community, I have to own these games and flex and show them on my shelf behind me. And you know what? A lot of people, young collectors and gamers that are new to the collecting scene, they feel this pressure and they begin to react, and it can actually be that I made a video a couple weeks ago about maturing as a collector and coming to a point where you understand yourself as a gamer and a collector and what you want to represent on your shelf, which is the things that you love. But this peer pressure can be really nasty. So, of course, we have the pressure to own rare games because that's, a badge of honor. If you own something rare, hard to find, and expensive, it shows that you're dedicated to the hobby, right? And then, of course, there's mini sets. You can't be a fan of Resident Evil if you don't have every single Resident Evil game in the franchise on every system, even if you don't own those systems or don't want to play them. Maybe you're a fan of Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil Village, and you want to go back and pick up a couple other Resident Evil games and check them out, maybe on semi-modern platforms like the PS3 or something like that. But as soon as you go online and start talking about this, You will feel that peer pressure because people will start posting pictures of their complete Resident Evil collection. Or Square Enix. Let's say you're a fan of some Square Enix games and you post a picture of some of your favorite Square Enix games, and then somebody else comes into the comments and posts a picture of 350 different Square Enix games, and they've got a complete collection of this and that and the other thing. You feel that pressure. You feel that desire, that need to keep up with the Joneses. You want to then go out and buy every Square Enix game you can, and this can be very unhealthy, especially for a new collector, because you can get discouraged. Some of these games are hard to find, many of these games are expensive, and many of them may not even be to your taste. So, mini sets are great. I personally collect mini sets as much as I can. I'm collecting a level 5 developer that made Professor Layton and Ni no Kuni and Yokai Watch. I love that developer, and I'm trying to get a complete collection of everything that they released in North America. But if that was not your original intention, there are always going to be games in those mini sets that you don't like and that you don't play, and you're going to end up with stuff on your shelves that you don't care about. So, feeling that pressure, it even happens in brand new consoles, brand new games. We get it all the time. There's hype around a new console like the Switch OLED, for example, that just came out 3 or 4 days ago. The internet was on fire about whether they loved the OLED or hated it, but there's a certain crowd, a lot of YouTubers, for example, they all talk about getting the OLED on day one. I got one myself on day one. I actually wanted it, though. I didn't necessarily feel the peer pressure, but I can understand how, with all the hype out there, with all the different YouTubers, all the different websites, all the different people in Facebook groups and Twitter talking about this new exciting thing, you feel like you need to buy that thing in order to engage in the community, to be on the level with everyone else. And that can be unhealthy for your wallet, and it can be unhealthy for your mental health as well, because when you feel that pressure, you start to do things that maybe aren't the greatest for you, for your wallet, for your lifestyle. Following that next hot thing, let's talk about Metroid Dread that just came out alongside the Switch OLED. You may have never played a Metroid game. You may have got caught up in the hype because everybody's been talking, buy Metroid Dread, buy Metroid Dread. Let's get it over, the best-selling Metroid game of all time. And you get caught up in that hype, and you go out and you buy the game, or maybe even the special edition, and you think it's pretty cool, but then you realize you don't like Metroid. The game is super difficult, and you play it for 45 minutes and you never touch it again. What do you do at that point? Do you keep that thing on your shelf forever as a reminder of your failure or of your lack of interest in this item that you bought, or do you eventually sell it down the road? What do you do to rationalize in your head when you've made a purchase that you don't really feel a connection with? So, it could the same thing with systems, The new generation is out. It's been out for almost a year, and people are absolutely clamoring still to get PS5s and Xbox Series X's. But is it really worth it? Is there enough of a library built up on those consoles to really make it worth it? I think we're getting there. But do you need to be that person who is at the head of the line to get that PS5 just so that you can flex that you got a PS5 and all the guys down the street don't have one yet? That's the peer pressure. That's, you feel this when you engage online, and it really can be not healthy. Of course, it doesn't just stop at games and consoles. There's also the essential collectibles that go with all this stuff. Whether it's posters or magazines, having a complete Nintendo Power collection, or strategy guides, having rare strategy guides for some of your older games. Of course, that's a flex. If you can post a picture on Instagram of Final Fantasy VII and the Final Fantasy VII strategy guide, you're going to get 27 likes, right? That's just the way the peer pressure works. And if you have a limited edition figure of Cloud from Final Fantasy VII in the picture as well, you're a really dedicated Final Fantasy collector. Of course, then there's collector's edition games. Feeling that pressure to buy the more expensive version of a game that comes with maybe a bunch of stuff you don't care about, like figures, books, soundtracks, things like that. Are they cool to have? Sure, if you're into that sort of thing. But if you are purchasing collector's editions of games and spending that extra money and spending that extra effort to track these things down, is it because you truly love the game, the franchise, the thing that collector's edition represents, or are you doing it to keep up with the Joneses, to post those pictures on Instagram and make yourself feel like part of the cool crowd? You know, even with limited edition consoles, of course this has happened across all consoles. You can't just have a 3DS, you have to have a Zelda 3DS or a Pokemon 3DS or the Heineken GameCube or whatever the case may be in order to feel like you've got something to brag about. And this entire thing can be very unhealthy long term, and what ends up happening is you as a collector, you begin to burn out because you are constantly striving for that next cool thing. You are constantly striving to be the cool guy on the block, right? With the coolest, rarest, most valuable stuff. And you're going to burn out. You're going to lose sight of the fact that you love to play video games and you want to play cool video games, and instead you're going to be focused on what people see on the shelves behind you, and that is not healthy. So take a look at your collecting habits and really think for a minute, why did you buy that? Why are you planning on buying the next thing and the next thing? Is it because you want to enjoy it, or is it because someone else has enjoyed it and thinks that you should have it in order for you to be a legit collector? Let me know down in the comments what you think about this whole conversation. I think it's a pretty important conversation. I'd be interested to hear your stories of caving into peer pressure, or maybe perhaps coming to the point that I did where you realize that you don't need to own all this cool stuff and start to maybe downsize or be a little bit more specific about what you buy in the future. Thanks so much for watching. Say hi in the comments. Stay classy.